All right, Scott Carr here, founder of the Empowered Parents Network and Belief Trumps Talent. And I'm welcoming you to episode 1 of Solo Dad's Smiling Taboo Topics That Matter to Parents. Again, Scott Carr, host of your show. I'm going to help you become more informed and inspired to engaging on some crucial parenting talks in these episodes. And specifically, if reducing drama in your home, or creating better work-life parenting balance, or becoming more important to your child than their phone are areas of interest to you, then I really encourage you to stick around for the entire episode, this lively episode. And that's going to be, a great thing for you if you're a parent looking for those types of tips. I appreciate you joining us today, and I encourage you to stick around again from start to finish, as you're not going to want to miss any of this really valuable, really real content that's really dedicated to helping modern parents figure it all out. I also want you to stick around because I got a gift for you at the end. And before I introduce you to our special guest today, Bob Stacey, I want to mention briefly my main motivation for really creating the show. Solo Dad Smiling has come about really as a result of my experience raising 3 daughters solo, and really more specifically that I became wise enough and smart enough in the end to allow my daughters to really raise me. And as it became wise around that, it became something that was a real advantage for me. And, despite all the bumps and bruises along the way and everything I've learned, I just began to getting questions from parents like, Scott, how are you doing this? How are you becoming more positive, more resilient, more connected to your kids doing this on your own? How do you keep it going and become productive and focused in your life? And that's one of the reasons, based on those questions I was getting from other parents, that I decided to really share my message with the world and to inspire parents to be the best that they can be. And if you want to hear more about my story, by all means, go to the empoweredparentsnetwork.ca. You can get some free strategies there around reducing drama and conflict in your home. You can get strategies around how to create better work-life balance. And what's really important and crucial for parents today is to learn how to become more important to their child than their phone. But enough about me for the moment. We've got a great topic today. Before I introduce that title to you and our speaker, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him. As an example, really, of how greater awareness, acceptance, and unconditional love for our children can really conquer any divide or any stereotypes, and really how important it is for parents to grow alongside their children. I'm deeply honored and really excited to talk at length here with Bob Stacey in an interview we have called How a Football Coach Accepted His Son Coming Out. Now, Coach Stacey happens to be my former high school basketball coach. I'm not going to tell you the years, and he's recently retired from Nelson High School and the Halton Board of Education in Burlington, Ontario. And I want you to also know that Bob's been married for 32 years to his lovely wife, Joanne, and he's the proud father of 3, Brock, who's 30, Zachary, who's 28, and Natalie, who's 26. Bob has been a physical education teacher and an athletic director, again, for the Halton Board of Education from 1981 to 2015. He remains a coach extraordinaire, and he also, Coach Stacey, happens to be probably the only coach that you're likely aware of to win a provincial football and a basketball championship in the same year. I believe that was in 2001. Remarkable stuff. And he's fondly remembered by his athletes as a disciplinarian, but also someone that has had high-level tactical and strong interpersonal skills. He's a true mentor, and he always was passionate for youth and encouraging them to be great citizens. And as we get to our talk today, just to segue into it, I want you to know that Bob and Joanne are both very involved in their chapter, and we're co-founders, in fact, of the Halton PFLAG chapter, which is for parents of and friends of and family of lesbians and gays, and as Bob mentions now, more commonly trans young people now. So whether you're a parent of a gay, straight, or trans child, you're going to find this dialogue very moving, extremely insightful, and from it, you're going to get really to understand some keys about how to navigate the minefield of modern parenting. So, hey, Bob, without anything more from me, I want to welcome you to the show, and anything to add before we start?
Thanks, Scott. The provincial championships were not quite in the same year, but they were within 2 years. And I was fortunate to be surrounded by some good athletes, and very proud of those provincial championships.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. No doubt. I mean, that's why we're doing these things, trying to get better. And it was great to be part of your program and to know that my group played a small role in building some blocks as you grew it out large. Now, you know, this is a really personal story, and it's something we connected on a few months back. And it's just, again, I'm thrilled to have you on the show today to talk about it. I guess the first question around your son and your circumstances, and feel free to elaborate as much as you want, because our listeners are not aware really of any of the circumstances around your story. Let me ask you, how was it that your son originally came out?
Yeah, really good first question, Scott. It takes me back actually 15 years. I can't believe it's like yesterday. I'll talk about it later, but my son recently married, which is pretty cool at 30. But I always tried in the early years of parenting to teach my kids confidence. And I was actually quite proud that Brock was able to come out at the age of 15. But it was a very difficult time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And so 15, I guess grade 10 or 11, and you were teaching at the same school?
It was actually very, very real. And it's emotional. It still is, because it's real life. He was actually in grade 10. And as an athlete, a coach, I have to be honest, I wasn't prepared and ignorant on my part, but I really wasn't in any way aware. I did wonder why he had so many girlfriends, and he talked much more with my wife. But at the age of 15, Brock came to our room. It was a Sunday morning. I'll never forget it. And he said there's something wrong with him. And what goes through a parent, a dad's mind is, is he sick? Is he depressed? Has he got a girlfriend pregnant? Is he addicted to something? And that flashes through your mind quite quickly. But when he said, I'm gay, it was very shocking. And it was difficult. My wife handled it better than I did. But she said, straight or gay, you better get ready for work. You're going to be late. And that was pretty cool. That broke the ice. And I got ready and took Brock to work because he didn't have his license yet. And when I got back, my wife and I cried. It was difficult, very difficult morning. But we did ask Brock before he went to work if he could allow us to learn and understand and to give us some time. But we were proud of him. We loved him, and he went to work. So that morning, it's fresh, it's cutting, it was real life. And shortly after that, a friend of mine said that, it's going to make you a better person. I shouldn't understand that at the time.
Wow. Yeah, remarkable stuff. And again, this is really amazing for parents that are listening and watching this dialogue and hearing your story, that, yeah, we think we have everything figured out. And then sometimes we get, some curveballs in our lives. And the fact that you were open and to it, and you found a way to grow through it, is remarkable. But I'm sure it wasn't that simple. Again, 15 years ago, even tougher times for youth, gay youth, than they are today. Although there's still obviously hurdles to clear here. What do you think, Bob, was the most difficult part of the whole journey?
Well, getting over the initial, crunch, the fear for our son, the thinking that it's going to be such a difficult life. Once we got through that and educated ourselves, I think we moved into a better place. Of course, I wasn't sure how things were going to go down at school, but little did I know, Brock, all his friends knew, and in fact, my football team knew, and they were waiting to see how Coach Stacy would react. So, the school part actually went very well. But in saying that, you know, you're just not sure of the unknown. And, you know, to narrow it down to one thing is not always easy, but, you know, I still looked at it, it wasn't what I wanted as a dad. And I'm being honest, because I knew it would be a more difficult life for Brock. And there are what we call gay bashers out there, and there are people that are still very harsh, prejudiced, and they do some bad things. So, you know, where we are 15 years later is much better. But, you know, it was hard thinking about, you know, how tough is it going to be for our son? But loving him, you know, we just backed him, and as we educated ourselves, as I said, we asked that he didn't do anything, any kind of showboating or something that we wouldn't expect from my other son or my daughter. And, you know, as an example, we're not going to walk into the gym and you're making out with someone. That's not what we would expect from your sister. So Brock respected that, and things move forward.
Remarkable. Before I get to another question, then, did you find when that was 15 years ago, as you remember, do you think that his classmates and his support system and friends at the school might have been even more accepting than adults or other teachers? Do you think that youth are more advanced in their acceptance?
Absolutely. In fact, if I were to summarize the difficulties that we have had being with adults, some through a religion, if I say it's the Catholic School Board, they have gays, they have straights just like we do, but some of the adults are not accepting. And I would say in that first month, we had one nasty letter written to us. Unfortunately, it wasn't signed, but basically someone told us that it was wrong and we better take our son to get some help. And they talked about church and so on, but really one negative out of so many positives. We also found out that some of our friends, they knew because Brock shared in trying to get the strength to tell his mom and dad.
Yeah.
That was difficult because, again, we wanted to help him, but thinking about what he was going through leading up to this. And so that was, you know, you're feeling for your kid. I mean, what was he going through? And how was he dealing with it? So he was reaching out to some of his friends and their parents that were friends of ours. So it actually made it easier in the end, but at the time we were hurt for Brock.
Remarkable. You know, so often our children lie to us because they want to protect us, you know, so it's probably, you know, 15, maybe not so young today, but given 15 years ago, that's a great age. And you're right. It shows a tremendous amount of courage. Yes. It shows a very strong sense of who he is and what was important to him. And really in the end, needing you to connect into his world and his reality. I think that shows a lot of trust between you and he, despite, you know, whatever trepidations you may have had in the beginning.
And Brock, you know, he was at our school, or my school in this case, and after that year ended, he actually moved to the Etobicoke School of Arts, and that was different. Brock was more comfortable himself there because he was singing and dancing. It was artsy. And we were just happy to support whatever he wanted to do. And if that was a better place, it was sort of like sending your kid off to the OHL in hockey. We didn't like the fact that he was moving out, but we found him a place to stay. And he actually had a really good experience there, and he met some fantastic people. His artistic endeavors enlarged, and he became a pretty good singer, and we were proud of him. And so singing and dancing was part of Brock, but you know, he didn't continue in that field, and as he grew up, he figured out what he wanted to do for a living.
Very cool. Wonderful stuff. Heartwarming stuff from Mark. I know you're still emotional about it all this time later. You love your kids, and you grew through it. It's just an amazing story. It's now getting back to your family, your own family. what can you tell our listeners about how your own families, yours and Joanne's, and your own other children, reacted to Brock coming out?
Yeah. My wife, Joanne, was fantastic, and she's got a social work background. And she had an inkling, but we'd never talked about it. Interesting, my dad passed away, so it was a very difficult year. But he had prepared me, I think, because he said, whether your kid throws the football, sings, dances, runs, love them. So I think my dad knew. He didn't tell me or he didn't talk about it with me, but I think he prepared me in saying that before he passed, so that, just made it easier. And in looking back, he prepared me to be strong. But really, I think the crunch of the difficulty was from my younger guy. So my middle guy, who was 13, and he was actually at a different school. And he didn't have the skills or the confidence to take some of the nasty on, so to speak. I remember he got some balloons at a Sadie Hawkins dance with some nasty things inside the balloons. And he was more of our athlete, although Brock was a good athlete himself, strong. My middle guy, who was a quarterback down the stretch, he at 13 didn't have the skills, so he took a lot of the brunt of the insults, and so we had to try to protect him. And the other school really wasn't as prepared for what was happening. And then my daughter, at 11, she was trying to figure out, would she have, a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law or who's who. It's funny how those young minds work, and she was just happy that her brother was at ease. So we don't know how they had talked, but she's very close to Brock and still is. My middle guy has grown and accepted, but again, more difficult when you take some of the turmoil. Grandparents, if I could, my mom was fantastic, and she just loves all of her grandkids. Joanne's parents, British. My father, he had a difficult time at first, and he was in denial. And when Brock went out with girls, he thought it was just a phase, and Brock's going to have a girlfriend and get married. And here we are, 15 years later. He actually gave Brock away at the wedding. So he came a long way, and it's remarkable that he struggled at first, but he's actually, Brock was sort of his favorite, which is pretty cool.
And so yeah, right on. So as you recount the family coming to grips with it and the changes and the support, I guess it's fair to say that over 15 years, that some of Brock's successes and maybe his real gift, but I guess part of his success and his ability to transition in a life out had to do with obviously some of the support that he had from friends, but your own family. Like the family support must have been crucial for him, would you say?
Absolutely. His aunts and uncles, and again, when I look at, I say to people, if an old or if a British fella, an older gentleman can adapt and change, I think anyone can. I also had a difficult situation. One of my brothers talked about loving Brock, but he didn't agree with it. And that was a bit harsh. And I didn't get upset, but I suggested he educate himself. And, my son Brock didn't just put up his hand one day and say, make me gay, or I'm gay, I want to be gay. Brock was born genetically this way, and it just took time for him to find the strength to be who he is. I also, we laugh, but my wife sort of says, well, it's the Stacy gene. So here we are, the athletic Stacy, so to speak. And I have some cousins we've since found out that are gay. And one of my aunts in particular was so happy and proud that we came out publicly to support the community, because 10 years prior, her son had been beaten quite badly at the University of Windsor. And she just wished things were where they were for us. And as I say, here we are now 15 years later. Things are so much better, but it doesn't mean there aren't some nasty people out there. Scott, I have to tell you, recently celebrating Brock's love at his wedding, and I toasted love. It's a beautiful ceremony. To get up the next day and to hear about the tragedy in Orlando was really difficult. It was like all this love and positive, and then here we are, and as good as it is 15 years later, there are still some things that happen out there that are mind-boggling, how people can be so cruel.
I remember you telling me about that. It's terrible timing for you to have gone through that. I know everyone feels terribly about what happened in Orlando. But at the same time, amazing that you gave Brock, you and Joanne gave them that gift. The family's given them a gift of acceptance and of love, and to be there at the wedding just must have been remarkable. That's great. Just before we get on to the last question about some advice for parents, were there any colleagues that were particularly supportive, in the first couple of weeks or months that you found, or friends or colleagues? And what can you say about a father? Here we are, you're talking about an award-winning basketball and football coach, a guy that's made a real imprint on hundreds and maybe thousands of students' lives, mostly in sport. What can you say about the support that you got from some colleagues that you worked with or friends?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my position within the school and actually within our community as a giving person, I think I really found out how when you give, people give back. And my colleagues around me in the phys ed department were outstanding. They had experiences, and they were actually proud that I took it head on, so to speak. So they were definitely supportive. I also had a principal at the time who had a big impact on helping me through the first, really few months of adapting. Looking back at the school, I know of one time and one time only, there was some graffiti, and you wouldn't believe, Scott, how quickly the custodians, again, friends, how quickly they took care of that. And I didn't feel in any way, that things were going to continue. At some of the basketball championships, I expected maybe some backlash from some kids. And our staff were very supportive. I'm sure there were some things behind the scene that I didn't hear about, but the staff around me were very supportive, and they loved my three kids, so to speak. They accepted them for who they were. It's good to have people around you that are that supportive.
Absolutely. Okay. And in the end, really, Brock becomes the unifier, doesn't he? Not just the trailblazer and living his truth, but he really becomes the unifier. And I think that's quite special. And we've talked about kids that just, maybe, have, the strength and courage to live their truth. And I think that's amazing. And again, I help parents understand that, when you can have the courage to allow your children to raise you in some ways and grow alongside them, then the magic really happens and the bond built, from there. So let me just ask you this question then around advice for other parents that are going through this, that maybe have a tougher time in their communities, more traditional communities, or maybe just to have their own sense of what, gay and straight people are. What are some ideas that you have for parents that are going through this and are transitioning to accepting a gay son or daughter?
Well, that's a another pretty loaded question. If I sort of talk about, we help other parents accept their kids, and that would be the number one thing. I mean, it's your child. Love your child and love them for their strengths and their weaknesses. Love them for their differences. I try to advise parents to talk about all their kids, not just their straight kids. So we're quite open to, I'll use the term boast. We're proud of Brock. So we don't just talk about our daughter or our son. In fact, both my sons run their own businesses. We're proud of both of them. If you alienate or you talk special about one, I think people don't get the full message. I don't look for taking on battles, but I'm not a person that tolerates gay jokes anymore. So early, I would mention to someone, and I recall an example on the golf course. Someone starts joking around, and when I said, "Oh, I have a gay son," you wouldn't believe how pale that guy got. And he was apologetic, and I said, "Don't worry about it." I said, "I've learned, I've grown." I go back to my colleague who said I'll be a better person for it. It made me better. It made me better as a teacher, as a coach. I looked into those eyes of those kids that needed some assistance. I looked at those grade 9 students that weren't as athletic and maybe felt some difficulty. And so it made me grow. And when I go back to how we started talking, my kids made me a better person. And my kids taught me, how to be more accepting. And, I kind of wish they didn't jump on their gadgets as much. We can't make our kids what we are, but, I still like when kids communicate and communicate without, as I say, the gadgets. I also say to parents, you just don't know what's around the corner. Scott, you've experienced this. When things go awry, things are not what you expect. Stand up and support them. I've seen a lot of parents in our situation accept within their own household. So they, in my opinion, they half accept that their son or daughter is gay, and I can't imagine. And so I share, are you telling me, and I will challenge them, are you telling me you're not going to allow your son to bring someone he loves home for Christmas? And so it's real. Are you telling me you're not going to allow your son to go on a vacation with his partner when it's a family vacation? And so these hurdles, it takes time. I'm open to say it was an adjustment for me seeing my son at his wedding, that loving. I was proud of him, but it was different for a dad to see his gay son kissing his partner. But that's a wedding, and that's love. And now I look back, and it's so much better. All of that. My middle guy, when he was dating his girlfriend, who we ended up marrying, it seemed like every time I came around the corner, he's up against the lockers with his girlfriend. They're having a little smooch, and as a dad, they would laugh. I wasn't expecting that, but over time, you adjust, and high school is that way. They weren't, as I said earlier, in the bleachers showboating. They were in love in the hallway. And it just so happened their dad came across. When I look at Brock's situation, he never, ever embarrassed his mom and dad and made us feel uncomfortable. And I'm proud of him for that, too. He's also learned to give back. He helps where he can. He's supported in the community where he can. And I think he's a good role model for people that are diverse. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in, but he's not looking for trouble either.
Wonderful. I think the last piece here around this is that you talked about Brock being 15. We talked about a story that you and I saw on ESPN a week or so back around the Courage game, around an 11-year-old boy that came out. There really isn't any timing for this, is there, Bob? There's no timing for this. It could be 10 or 11, it could be 15 or 16. You don't really know. You just need to be there for your son or daughter, don't you?
Absolutely. If your son comes home and his girlfriend's pregnant, is there a time? Is it right you accept, and you support as best you can? I think you got to let the guard down sometime, and in my case, being the athletic guy, it shook me to the bone in the sense of, is this really happening? And as I said, you don't know what's around the corner, and you end up learning. So it's pretty cool now when I look back over the 15 years. We've had some real characters around the house. Some of Brock's friends are much more gay, and it's like watching a TV show in your backyard. It's fun. They're really loving people, and that's what that's what you want for all your kids. I've always said to parents, I wish for my kids to be healthy and happy. I really mean that.
And wonderful. And just the last piece here, just before we can wrap for our listeners, I think you were quite emotional earlier on when you talked about your own father and the suspicion or the idea that maybe he was more in touch with Brock, and maybe you were, or in some ways you felt prepared, more prepared because of those conversations. I think it's important if we have grandparents listening right now that they really do have a role, don't they, in all this, is the steadying force, and this can be intergenerational acceptance, can't it?
Absolutely. And many of the elderly are now making those changes, those adjustments. But I also look at my situation in now being semi-retired. My time for my own grandkids is at a much slower pace. So I think my dad then was taking that extra time. I was in the whirlwind of work, of coaching, I would say chasing my wife. I was busy, and that's probably part of my ignorance, that I wasn't seeing what was maybe happening. And it's no one's fault, but we get very busy. As later, when things slow down a little bit, I think grandparents have a huge role in helping guide that stability. And there's all sorts of different families now, and I don't think it's an issue with the young kids. They're very accepting of each other.
Yeah.
Our world's come a long way.
Bob, great to spend this time with you here today. Again, you were there, you and Joanne both there for Brock to learn and to grow. It's wonderful that you've shared this from the heart. I know that you're benefiting other people that are listening to this right now, coming to grips with what you had, what you came to grips with and learned through 15 years ago. Could I just get your email? Could you just mention your email out so that if people are getting this and they want to reach out to you directly, they could contact you and have a conversation?
I sure can. Stacey B, STACEY B, at HDSB, that's the Halton District School Board, .ca. Once again, Stacey B at HDSB.ca. And Scott, it's been enjoyable, but I also have to, make it clear, without my Joanne, it would have been very difficult. Backbone for me, and help me through the difficulty, and it's not always easy. Parenting isn't, that. Whether you have 1 or 5 kids, it's not easy. So without my backbone, so Brock's mom was huge in support, and I was very fortunate to have her with me.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, that's great. You have Bob's email. If you'd like to reach out to him directly, please do so. He'd love to support you and hear about your story. And again, I mentioned to our listeners that if you're looking for any support around reducing drama in the home and learning how to be more important to your child than their phone and really establishing some quality productivity at work and some real connectedness in your home, achieving work-life parenting balance, as I call it, feel free to contact me at scott@beliefTrumpsTalent.com. So Scott at BELIEFTRUMPS talent.com. And I'd love to hear from you directly. I'm certainly offering a free 30-minute one-on-one session to help you in any way I can around the drama, around the devices in your homes. Bob, thanks for joining us today. We're going to sign off and wishing you a fantastic day. Thanks so much again for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Okay, good. We'll see you around next time. Scott Carr, founder of the Empowered Parents Network and host of Solo Dad Smiling. Wishing you a great day, and we'll see you on another episode upcoming. Take care.